The International Olympic Committee says it has no regrets over awarding the Winter Games to China, but the comment is colored by international backlash over the country's human rights record. America's top diplomat vows to defend Indo-Pacific freedoms. Amid China's ongoing aggressiveness in the South China Sea, U.S. Secretary of State Blinken is backing the need for rules-based order. A Harvard University professor is facing the music, appearing on trial for hiding his ties to China. Officials accuse him of accepting thousands in funding through Beijing's infamous Thousand Talents program. Starbucks serves up an apology this week after investigation found some stores in China using expired ingredients. And concerning footage suggests Chinese police are using a revamped policy to turn a profit. Locals say the officers are confiscating scooters and motorbikes without cause and selling them overseas. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. More nations are joining the diplomatic boycott of the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics over the country's human rights record. But the International Olympic Committee, or IOC, says they have no regrets in awarding the Games to China. On Monday, a senior IOC member told a German outlet that there was, quote, nothing wrong with China as a host from a sporting perspective, adding that it's a very good and very organized country. According to the IOC official, China would allow athletes to speak freely during news conferences on issues like the treatment of Uyghurs. But athletes will still have to abide by IOC rules, which prohibit them from protesting during sporting events or medal ceremonies. And another scandal involving China has heightened international scrutiny towards the IOC. An international organization called the Safeguard Defenders is filing a complaint against the IOC. It was over the committee's alleged ethical breach following the disappearance of Chinese tennis player Peng Shuai. Peng disappeared after she accused a former CCP vice premier of sexual assault. The IOC held 2 calls with Peng and confirmed her safety. But with China's history of forced confessions, many believe the IOC calls are not credible. The Safeguard Defenders condemned the IOC, saying their actions aided the CCP's propaganda efforts and increased danger for Peng. The US, the UK, Canada, and Australia have banned their officials from attending the Beijing Games. That's over Peng's disappearance and other human rights abuses by the CCP. And Belgium announced on Tuesday that they will join the diplomatic boycott as well. The Chinese regime denies all wrongdoings, branding the diplomatic boycott as political manipulation. On the other hand, Germany, France, and South Korea have held back from a diplomatic boycott. Instead, they prefer to use the occasion to pursue dialogue with China. And on Tuesday, one of the EU members, Austria, appears to be the latest to move away from a diplomatic boycott. The country's leader says although no senior officials will attend the Beijing Games, it's not a diplomatic boycott. It's simply due to virus restrictions in China. During an EU summit on Monday, Austria's foreign ministers seemed reluctant to join the diplomatic boycott.
We have a clear position on the human rights situation in China, but I don't think it is useful to let the Olympic Games artificially become a political event.
Last year, China was Austria's 4th most important trading partner outside the EU and the top trading partner in Asia. China has vowed to retaliate against the U.S. over the diplomatic boycott, but has given no details of its plans. Now we turn to the Indo-Pacific region. In his first visit to Indonesia, Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the U.S. is strongly committed to the South Asian country. He also notes the U.S. will defend Indo-Pacific freedoms. NTD's Don Ma has more.
Amid China's ongoing assertiveness in the South China Sea, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the United States would defend the rules-based order and maintain a free and open Indo-Pacific.
We'll work with our allies and partners to defend the rules-based order that we built together over decades to ensure the region remains open and accessible.
Blinken made the comments during a visit to Indonesia. He says the U.S. is strongly committed to the Southeast Asian country. The trip is part of a U.S. effort to deepen its Asian alliances and to boost defense and intelligence work with partners in the Indo-Pacific. Amid China's increasing aggression, the trip marks his first visit to Southeast Asia since President Biden took office. He added that China's aggressive actions in the South China Sea threaten more than $3 trillion in annual trade.
It's about upholding the rights and agreements that are responsible for the most peaceful and prosperous period this region and the world has ever experienced. That's why there's so much concern from Northeast Asia to Southeast Asia and from the Mekong River to the Pacific Islands about Beijing's aggressive actions.
But the Secretary's comments seem to have angered Beijing. Its foreign ministry said that the U.S. was inciting division and instigating confrontation. Beijing claims almost the entire South China Sea as its own and has built artificial islands there to back up its claim, covering an almost 3,000-acre area. This despite an international tribunal ruling that China's vast claim had no legal basis. Don Ma, NTD News.
Starbucks is setting its lattes and espressos aside and instead offering an apology. On Monday, the coffee shop chain announced it would carry out inspections and staff training across all of its stores in China. That's after a Chinese state-backed newspaper said 2 of those stores used expired ingredients. Newspaper Beijing News explained it conducted an undercover investigation focusing on Starbucks locations in the eastern Chinese city of Wuxi. It reported that one of the stores used expired matcha liquid to make lattes, while another had put pastries up for sale that were meant to be thrown away. The incident soon started trending on social media site Weibo, often considered China's version of Twitter. Worth noting, the Chinese regime and its state-backed media have a history of targeting foreign companies. In response to the outcry, Wuxi City's Market Supervision Administration carried out checks on all 82 Starbucks stores in the area after the incident. One day later, regulators from a neighboring city noted that food safety issues were found at over a dozen of them. China is the largest market for Starbucks outside the United States. Its official website says currently there are over 5,400 stores in over 200 cities across China. A Hong Kong court sentenced media tycoon Jimmy Lai to a year and a month behind bars for participating in an assembly last year. Alongside with him, 7 other pro-democracy activists were sentenced to up to 14 months in prison. The annual candlelight vigil was to commemorate the CCP's Tiananmen Square massacre in 1989. The event has been carried out in a major park in Hong Kong every year since 1990. But Hong Kong authorities banned the assembly last year, citing pandemic measures. In a statement read by the court before the sentencing, Lai and 7 other people said they have no regrets for what they've done. Lai also wrote in a statement, quote, "If commemorating those who died because of injustice is a crime, then inflict on me that crime and let me suffer the punishment of this crime, so I may share the burden and glory of those young men and women who shed their blood on June 4th to proclaim truth, justice, and goodness." The organizing body of the event disbanded in September. It was after authorities arrested several of its leaders under the national security law. The communist regime imposed a new law on Hong Kong last year. It punishes what Beijing broadly defines as subversion, secession, terrorism, and collusion with foreign forces. The chairman and the vice chairwoman of the organization were sentenced to 14 and 12 months in prison for their involvement in the rally. Earlier this year, prominent Hong Kong activist Joshua Wong and 3 other people were also sentenced to up to 10 months in prison for the same rally. Harvard University professor Charles Lieber faced trial on Tuesday for lying about his ties to China. Jury selection is slated to begin in a federal court in Boston. Lieber is a pioneer in the field of nanoscience. He faces false statement charges and tax charges for lying to authorities. He has pleaded not guilty. Prosecutors said Lieber became a strategic scientist for the Wuhan University of Technology and that he participated in a Chinese recruitment initiative called the 1,000 Talents Program. China uses the program to entice foreign researchers to share their knowledge with Beijing in exchange for benefits. As part of the program, the Wuhan University gave Lieber more than $1.5 million to build a Chinese lab. They also agreed to pay him $50,000 per month, plus $150,000 in annual living expenses. Prosecutors said Lieber lied to investigators about his involvement in the program and misled Harvard University. Also on the science and technology front, a top smartphone brand in China, Oppo, unveiled its first self-developed chip on Tuesday. This while Beijing aims to achieve self-reliance in semiconductors. The chip is designed for those who enjoy taking photos on smartphones. It will allow for better quality and faster image or video processing. Apple smartphones with the chip are slated for release in the first quarter of next year. The need for a self-sufficient chip industry came to light last year when the U.S. sanctioned Chinese telecom giant Huawei. Being cut off from using U.S. technologies crippled Huawei smartphone and in-house semiconductor divisions. For many decades, the U.S. has been the leader in the chip-making industry. According to semiconductor researcher IC Insights, 8 out of the world's 15 largest semiconductor companies are in the U.S. Currently, Chinese plants are still unable to make chips more advanced than the 14-nanometer process. As a comparison, in 2020, Samsung and TSMC entered productions of 5-nanometer chips. This is partly why China is mainly an importer of chips. The country imported $350 billion worth of chips last year. That's roughly the GDP of Denmark. A merger deal between U.S. chipmaker Magnachip and a Chinese private equity firm has been scrapped over national security concerns. They first struck their $1.4 billion merger agreement in March. But Chinese equity firm Wise Road says they had to scrap the deal because the U.S. wouldn't approve the merger. The companies announced the news Monday. Magnachip will get a termination fee of $70 million. The U.S. Treasury Department said in August the deal posed risks to national security, while the U.S. Committee on Foreign Investment ordered the deal to be put on hold in June. Police in southern China are confiscating scooters and motorcycles. Reports say their actions fall under a so-called rectification campaign. But an insider told NTD that authorities are actually selling the looted vehicles to Africa for profit. Let's take a look.
Video clips coming out of China are exposing a worrisome issue. They suggest police in the country are confiscating scooters and motorcycles owned by locals, then taking the vehicles and selling them for personal profit. In eastern China, a delivery man in the city of Qingdao was seen kneeling down and kowtowing to the police. That's after they towed his scooter. In the clip, he appears to be pleading with the officials to return the bike. A comment left on the social media video empathizes with the delivery man's reaction. It suggests that the scooter may carry the livelihood for his entire family by allowing him to make a living and provide for them. Another video shows several police officers in an apparent traffic stop with a motorist. They attempt to seize the load of cargo tied to the vehicle, but the driver refused. So the police dragged him to the ground and accused him of failing to cooperate. Still another clip shows a police officer dragging a mother away from her scooter in front of her 2 young sons. This time the incident happened in southern China, in the Guangxi Autonomous Region. But the situation seems even worse for its neighboring region to the east, called Guangdong. Starting in March, local authorities launched another round of what they call the rectification of unregistered scooters and motorcycles. But this time the policy is taking a stricter approach, with police going so far as to break into people's homes to take the so-called offending vehicles. The procedure even applied to one child's tricycle. According to U.S.-based news service Radio Free Asia, the large-scale rectification campaign is carried out with little to no paper trail, meaning police don't fill out documentation while seizing the vehicles. Experts explain that the issue is a persistent one, because Chinese law isn't binding for law enforcement. Telling footage reveals dozens of motorcycles and bikes piled up outside one police station. As for the fate of the bikes, some say they're slated to be sold in Africa. NTD spoke with a former office director for an export company based in Guangdong province. Ms. Zhao believes authorities are sending the looting vehicles overseas to make money for themselves. She explained that the company she worked for would approve customs declarations for the police and help them transport large numbers of motorcycles to Africa.
The Omicron variant appears to be making its way through China. Another case appeared in the country's southern Guangzhou city on Tuesday. The case follows China's first Omicron patient, detected on Monday in the country's northern Tianjin city. The strain had hitched a ride with an overseas traveler who arrived in the city last week. Chinese officials did not reveal where the person came from. But Poland's health ministry chimed in on Tuesday. The agency said the traveler was a Polish teenager who flew to China from Warsaw. According to a Chinese media report, the second and most recent patient also came from overseas. He reportedly flew to Guangzhou in November and tested positive after more than 2 weeks in quarantine. He is now receiving treatment in isolation in a hospital. Despite Omicron's relatively limited appearance in the country, Chinese officials are alarmed. They've already tested more than 10,000 people related to the infected patient. But so far, all results have come back negative. In Guangzhou City, officials have imposed strict lockdown orders in some districts. They include mass testing for residents and efforts to transfer locals from areas under lockdown to centralized isolation camps. Officials have also imposed provincial-level travel restrictions in Guangdong. Besides Omicron, further spread of the CCP virus, which causes COVID-19, has been detected in Zhejiang province. Officials are extending travel restrictions for several cities within the province until March next year. In one of those cities, residents told the Epoch Times they are currently running out of food while under lockdown. Chinese officials have previously voiced confidence in tackling the new variant and cited China's strict antivirus strategies as support. But the country's tactics, like mass testing, snap lockdowns, and extensive quarantines, also come at great cost to people's daily lives. The Chinese Communist regime is looking to hire more part-time internet censors, known as China's Wu. Their job is to find, delete, and block online content that the regime deems sensitive or that criticizes Beijing. But training them can get expensive, so the regime is gathering new recruits from state-run companies and asking them to bear the costs. Let's take a look.
The Chinese Communist regime is starting to recruit more Wu from inside the state-run corporations. Wu is the domestic term for China's 50-cent army, an organization made up of Chinese infamous internet censors. They are responsible for posting online content that support the regime and attacking, censoring, or banning anything or anyone who criticizes it. It's one of Beijing's most widespread powerful tools for influencing public opinion. The Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, used to employ all Wu directly, but now state-run companies are signing their paychecks. Many believe financial difficulties have made the CCP unable to afford paying so many full-time Wu workers. That's why the regime is outsourcing, recruiting new part-time trainees from the pool of state-run corporation employees. The Epoch Times obtained a recent document from Shandong Gold Group. It explained the company's plans to build an online censor team to further guide public opinion and to expand so-called positive opinions. The document also clarifies that it's the corporation that will pay the workers, and that their performance ratings will decide how much they're compensated. The new censorship team is primed to include over 100 people. It's composed of 2 layers, the base and the core. According to the document, the core censors workers will include employees from the company's headquarters and major branches, while the base layer will consist of employees from lower-tier companies under Shandong Gold Group. Even though the Wu workers are Shandong Gold Group employees, they're banned from posting unauthorized comments online. The document says they must only share content under the instruction of the group's CCP propaganda department.
Chinese police are physically abusing women, children, and the handicapped, while evidence and accusations of torture are piling up. Chinese propaganda videos depict the country's law enforcement officers as compassionate and gentle. Yet when the press cameras stop rolling, their actions often take a harsh turn. In this week's special report, we cover some of the many examples of Chinese police negligence for human rights and how that neglect has led to beatings, torture, and even death. And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching, and see you tomorrow.